Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam. Good morning. Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It is Wednesday, November 24th, 2021. I usually mess up with the day, but the year, Lord Jesus. And it is Thanksgiving Eve. Somebody already wished me a happy Thanksgiving Eve this morning. And so we are definitely, I believe in being thankful. And tomorrow's usually Thankful Thursday, but I believe in being thankful daily. But tomorrow is the day that the United States and other parts of the world have set aside for Thanksgiving. And so toward the end of today's broadcast, we're going to share some thankfulness. For those of you that are just tuning in, please stay tuned in because I have a very important programming announcement that I'm going to make at the end of today's show to update you guys just about some things that are moving and happening in the Java Cafe. But without further ado, and I'm telling you now, this is a tone that's usually set for Freestyle Fridays, but I seen a tweet the other day from a young man that I'm about to bring on. And then when I think about the young man and the tweet, I have to reflect back on the wonderful session I had with Gina and her coworker Maya, and I was able to reach out to Gina. And we're going to talk this morning for We Need to Know Wednesdays about the City Council Presidency. As you all know, we just elected we just had our municipal election, and there are some new city councilors, there are some incumbent city councilors, and the City Council elects a president. I believe it's every term at the beginning, and they serve in the presidency for 2 years. And so post Marty Walsh going to the Department of Labor as the secretary, a lot of things opened up as far as the city charter, as far as having our wonderful first female Black mayor, Kim Janey, who served this city for 8 months. 8 is the number of new beginning, if you want to talk about biblical numbers. And then we have now the city council that will be coming in January. We understand that Michelle Wu was sworn in October per that process. And so to speed things up, there's an election that takes place. And I seen a tweet the other day, and while Dave and Gina reintroduce themselves to maybe for some new viewers and say hello to some Java fam, I'm going to pull that tweet up by Mr. Halbert and read it. And that's sort of the catalyst to why we're talking about what we need. It's a serious subject, and we're going to have some wonderful sassy dynamics between Gina and I. But why don't we start with Gina? If you could introduce yourself, say good morning, and how would you describe the city council presidency process from your awareness of it in one way? This is going to be interesting. In one word, ma'am, in one word.
Well, hi, y'all. My name is Gina. I'm the Senior Strategic Engagement Consultant at Rivera Consulting. So happy to be back. Happy Thanksgiving to y'all. One word to describe the process, I think probably, I'm going to do a hyphened word, which is closed-doored.
That's permitted, especially in this context.
Thank you very much.
And Dr. Halbert, how are you, as I look for your tweet, can you introduce yourself and you describe the city council process by your awareness, and you used to work in the chamber, by your awareness? How would you describe it in one?
Yes. Oh, good morning. Good morning, Jimmy. Good morning, Gina. Always great to see you and start the day off with some friends. Good morning to everyone out there in Java with Jimmy Land. Once again, David Halbert, Dorchester resident, recently candidate for Boston City Council at large, current job seeker, I guess is probably the best way to put it. But in all seriousness, going back to this process, and the reason that I put the tweet out in the first place is kind of to echo what Gina was saying, right? It's opaque, and it's not specific to any one individual, and it's just been the culture and the history of this process. But I don't want to get too deep into it before I want to usurp your show. But I will say I think that one of the reasons why this conversation is important right now is because we're at a pivotal moment in the city's history. With the election of Mayor Wu, with all these other councilors that are coming in, as you said, 5 new councilors out of 13, brand new, going to be starting in, well, actually, I shouldn't say that. 4 new councilors are brand new that are going to be starting in January. One, Councilor Murphy, is going to be starting relatively soon, getting a little bit of a head start there. And then you have a whole another cohort, and almost another third of the city council that's only coming to the end of their first term. So a very different dynamic, a very different change dynamic from when I was there, when you were there, Jimmy, at City Hall, right, working. And I think we have a really unique moment that we can take right here as a community, as a body politic here in the city of Boston, to ask, can we do things in a different way? Can we do things in a way that's more transparent, that's more open, that pulls the curtain back a little bit on some of those things that are happening, some of those conversations that are happening, because frankly, it's better and it's healthier for all of us.
I agree. I'm going to read the tweet and then give my word for my awareness of it, because I came up under one of the beast, and I know those it's just the last 2 terms. I know that there was the ability to garner who was going to be the city council president. And so that's no slight at all. But David, let's read your tweet. And thank you both, because I reached out to you last minute to get you guys to come in this morning. And that happens sometimes based on tweets and current events. And so David writes, we all just saw how important who city council president can be. Let me read that over again. We all just saw how important who, sometimes at Twitter, you can't put everything right, who the city council president can be. I would love if those seeking the post put out their vision for the office, council, and Boston now, so residents can learn and contact their district and at-large councilors about their votes next year. So, David, let's just jump right in. I've never, first, let me say my awareness of the city council process, I would say, is garnered. My awareness of it. And I used to work for the city's longest serving mayor, Thomas M. Menino, and definitely honor his legacy. But it's I agree with both of you. It's closed door and opaque. And David, did you say opaque? Was that your word?
That was my word. I got to put that English degree to use sometimes.
Yeah.
Listen. And I know Gina appreciates that because she writes her, Lord Jesus. Okay, so David, you're saying in the issues, and Gina, I want to come to you first. When it comes to issues, when it comes to a closed door process, first of all, why did you say closed door process? What is your awareness of how we get our city council president?
Yeah, so I first of all, I love that David tweeted this the other day. I just think there's so much behind the scenes moving here, and we really don't talk about it very often, particularly on social media. So it was so great to see that conversation started. My awareness of this process started in 2019 when I worked for Alejandra, and we were literally on like the recount floor, and Kim was like checking in with Alejandra to see if she had her vote for city council president, right? And I'm sure she was having the same conversation with Julia. Like, it's a campaign. It's a campaign within a campaign, and it's definitely, you can look back on dynamics from the campaign cycle, right? To see sort of, to map out like relationships and who's with who and who's in what cohort, but it's very, very internal. And it shouldn't be, right? Because the council president basically establishes the culture of the city council, right? Like Michelle Wu is the mayor in my assessment because of the way that she executed her presidency on the city council. I would say I think Andrea also, a lot of people had expectations for her that she didn't necessarily meet a city council president. Not my opinion, just what I've heard. So there's a lot of people, I would say it's a very defining position for the chattering class, right? And can be very, very make or break.
And so there are a couple of things there I want to bring out as far as what you said. And David, jump right in here because you work for a council person, Mike Flaherty, and then Sam Yoon, correct?
Not exactly. I worked for Sam, and then I worked for John Tobin.
John Tobin. Okay. Why did I
Yeah.
think? Oh, that was Carl.
Like,
Because
yeah,
all
The youth clarity ticket, yes,
we were
2009.
all, oh yeah, that's right, Flume. But we were all, so let's just name that David, myself, Darren Howell, Carlos Enriquez, Rob Woodson. We were all on 5, and I was the only one that was on the other side. And they used to, yeah, it was interesting. So anyway, the committees that are responsible for introducing hearings. We've seen a lot of hearings introduced this year, from administrative around the budget to the hearing that Lydia Edwards proposed, or the legislation she proposed around the whole acting mayor thing. I mean, there is a lot that comes out of the committees. And so thank you, Gina, for establishing that a tone is set from the city council president. Let's also name, because of what happened this year, the vying for that office now is very it's up exponentially. It's probably up about 50. Let's just keep it 100. And so, David, to Gina's point, and getting tech, I mean, and where did I don't, somewhere it said text, or somebody replied and said yes, there are texts and stuff that go on or whatever. And so our kind of outside but inside awareness of the process, why do you say opaque?
Yeah, because, as Gina was saying, right, it's a campaign within a campaign. So when I ran, when the members of the council ran, when the candidates for mayor ran, we ran in front of the city, whether it was citywide or in front of our district. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, and that were all giving their input into how the city should be run by the vehicle of the mayor and their city councilors. But then when you get here, and by the way, this isn't specific just to the Boston City Council, right? This is the legislature. This is Congress. This is how these things happen. Right. But as you said, these internal conversations that are happening, this campaign comes down to one individual contacting 12 other individuals and making a determination as to who should lead this organization, lead this body. And you can say, okay, yes, this is like many organizations, right? We pick from within our own, right? The fans for the Patriots don't get to pick who's the team captain, right? It's the players who pick, and the coaches and such. But at the same time, this is different, because the individuals who sit in this role have, as Gina said, a different and an outsized influence in setting the culture. And to those committees, right? That is really important, because the vision that you have for what you want to see, a lot of folks don't realize that not only do you, pick who's going to lead those committees, the city council president gets to determine what committees even exist in the first place. So, I've talked a lot about in 2019 about the need for a post-audit and oversight committee, which had existed for a long time. It was there when I was there, Jim, it was there when you were there, and then it went away. Yep. Right. And it went away for a number of years because a different city council president said we didn't need that committee. And I think that was a mistake. And I'm glad to see that under, Council President Janey, it came back this term. But that was because Council President Janey said we do need to have a post-audit and oversight committee. So if we want to have, there's some standing committees, things like committees of the whole and ways and means, things that are going to go into in the future regardless. But on some of these other committees that are more issue specific, right, it can be. And I'll give you 2 really quick examples of why that's important, right? Because I know a lot of folks are like, well, Michelle's not going to go anywhere, so it doesn't matter. The council president's not going to become the acting mayor, all that. But it's beyond that. Let's go back to the ballot. Forget the names and the people who are running. Let's talk about those ballot questions for a minute, right? Question, right? Let's talk about that question about participatory budgeting, which was a binding question, which is going to fundamentally change how we apportion money in this city, right? I've said a long time, and I know both of you are agreement on this, where you spend your time and where you spend your money shows what you care about, shows what is important. So just in terms of this as something that is completely brand new to the city of Boston, that means we are going to have to determine what the mechanism is for this, how we operate it, who gets to be at that table, who gets to have their voice heard, and how it is heard and what weight it is given. And that is going to be different in different communities, because different communities have different needs and are going to be asking for different things. This is really important. So the question becomes, do we have a separate, participatory budgeting committee on the council? Is this something that gets folded under, say, ways and means? Those are real, like actual practical on the ground, will affect people on the streets of Boston every day kind of decisions. And the second piece is the conversation that we've been having about the school committee, right? And the changes to that. I don't just come to this as a resident here in the city. I'm a parent. I'm a BPS parent. I have one daughter in the school, and I have one daughter who's probably going to be in the school next year. So the decisions that we're going to make about what structure we actually have right? Is it going to be all at large, school committee members that are elected? Is it going to be district school committee members that are elected? Is it going to be a hybrid school committee? Those are really important conversations. And we know after this last term, right, and a lot of the conversations that we had just focused on the exam schools, that there are very different opinions, even among the city councilors who exist right now, as to what education in the city of Boston should look like. And so who leads the education committee could have a very significant material impact on what that conversation is.
David, so you're a little prophetic, because I wanted to ask Gina, and we can go right here and I can still ask, but you said a wonderful foundation. Gina, when you were on the other day, we talked about this historic moment. We talked about, and I don't know if it was here, but I've heard the word Renaissance, that Michelle Wu will be known as a Renaissance mayor. And so how important David laid the foundation. Can you go a little bit deeper in how the council impacts new legislation, things that, for example, no slight against Councilor Campbell, but when Mayor Wu came in within a couple of days and dedicated $8 million to keep the 26 to 28, and I think the buses, 3 buses free. To David's point about a post audit committee, let's say in the same vein, there was a question asked and it could have halted. And so, can you talk a little bit about what David mentioned in the fact that how the council plays a role in this historic moment, and also considering what happened this year? Folks vying, we got to talk about that. Folks vying for that seat are vying for different reasons.
Yeah, I think David makes such a good point. And I think, the council president this year in particular is going to have a huge mantle. They are going to have they have to have a relationship with Michelle that is a working relationship, a friendly relationship. So because the work of a council president and the mayor, it goes beyond policy, right? It's about how do you manage this group of individuals who are elected from neighborhoods across the city, right? What are the issues you want to prioritize, right? Like how are we going to approach participatory budgeting? Does Michelle want to have that conversation with Frank Baker or Ricardo Arroyo? I know what my preference would be, but that's sort of what the council president, that's sort of what's at stake here, is what I would say. The other piece too is, we have a lot of receipts from the last term of some of the votes folks have taken, and particularly with around the racial justice piece in Boston and the movement to reallocate funding from the police, I think is going to become a really big part of the conversation on the council president. It definitely will externally. But again, I think it was like David said on another issue, the councilors are across the spectrum on that, right? Like there are people who voted for the budget because there was other stuff in there. They wanted to make sure that certain pieces of the budget got funded. They couldn't dare vote against it, all of those pieces, while other people voted it down, saying, listen, I understand the other parts of this budget are really important, but in terms of a value statement and the mandate we've been given by the city of Boston, I can't vote for the way that the money is continuing to go to the Boston Police Department. So I think everybody on the Boston City Council is like a Democrat, right? But I think for the first time, we're seeing the broadest spectrum of what that means on the precipice of a very, very important mayoral.
One last speech, Gina, I want to ask you to end with is and David jump in right after. So that's generally what the city council presidency does, sets tone, foundation. Now with what happened with Mayor Janey, let's get into the vying and the different presumed aggression that those folks that are vying for are going to either means in which they utilize. Because let's keep it real, there's wheeling and dealing going on. You vote for me, you get public safety. You vote for me, you get education. And so it's we might have to do another piece on this, because it's a real deeper dive when we start talking about values. Gina, you referenced to the fact that we have receipts. We have votes. And that's the point I was making, because it doesn't necessarily have to be an incumbent. And at some point, I want to throw out some names to you all to get some reactions. But Gina, can you, and then David right after, post what happened this year, how much exponentially do you think the vying for the seat has went up?
This is such an interesting question, because up until Kim Janey, everyone was like, oh yeah, council president, like they could be mayor someday, whatever. And then it happened. And I don't think that's going to happen again anytime soon. Knock on wood, like, blessings up for Michelle. But I will say that Kim elevated the position in terms of the public awareness of it, right? The public understanding of what a city council president is, what that means power adjacent. So I think, and the press really understands that role now, right? And the strategy and narrative around a city council president. So I think that the next person who gets that job is going to be able to have a very different conversation with a media landscape and a social media landscape that understands the role a little bit better, or is at least more interested, right? So it could be more of a springboard to other pieces than before, right? And if you look at, you can say this about anyone on council, everybody could spring to somewhere, you know what I mean? And it's just like, is this the springboard that they want to use?
David, your thoughts based on what Gina just said about the vying, and also what was the part about the elevation that Mayor Janey did? And let's just name, and Michelle has called this out, that, though somebody tried to say geriatric millennial, but I got a text the other day, and our mayor was like, as a millennial mayor, I and I staff are doing things differently, post that viral, congratulations to Shagun, post that viral tweet. And it's like, there is a different tone. So thank you for naming social media and how Mayor Janey raised it. But there's an accountability that Gina cited there, Dave. And so vying and accountability, can you talk to that? And then I'm going to throw out some names to both of you.
Yeah. On the vying part, I think it isn't that different than it's been in the past. Really? But I think once again, this goes to, to Gina's point earlier, right? It's not that it's different. It's just that now we see it a little bit more, right? And so that curtain's been pulled back. There's always been competition. Right. We remember when it was, Matt O'Malley and Kim Janey, and we remember when Ayanna was running for city council. there's always been competition, but it's about every generation that the seat itself becomes kind of pivotal, right? So you had this term around with, acting Mayor Janey becoming acting Mayor Janey. And then prior to that, the last time it was significantly impactful was when Mayor Menino went from being city council president Menino to Mayor Menino. And we all know where that went, right? So it does happen in a fairly cyclical way. But I think that to the accountability part, it's accountability in a couple different directions. And that's why it's so important. One, the relationship between this mayor and this council will be, will be fundamentally different than it has been ever. And
How so?
Right. Well, think about it. We'll go back to our shared history, Jimmy. When we were on the council and you were in the mayor's office, probably about a third or so, maybe third to half at any given moment of the city councilors that were there, people that I worked for as well, right? Chased their political history, their entire political existence back to the mayor.
Yes.
Right. They had been staff members. They had come up. They had been supported. I won't say owed him, but there was just a different kind of a relationship. And when he was putting his agenda out there, he knew he had very different kinds of almost immediate organic allies right there. Right. There's no one that I can think of really on the city council right now who owes their existence in any significant way, shape, or form to this mayor. Gotcha. That means that there is a fundamentally different, kind of dynamic and relationship. There's this different level of independence. And by the way, that's not a bad thing. That's a healthy thing because the council should be, to some degree, even though we have a strong mayor system, a counterweight, a different kind of independent voice. And we saw the council starting to emerge with that more and more during the Walsh administration. Right. There are things, we know that happened during the Walsh administration in terms of the relationship, in terms of the policies that were put out by the council that would never have happened during the Menino years. Right. Because that relationship was different. So that's a good thing. So I think for the individuals, particularly given what we saw, the overwhelming mandate for Mayor Wu, right, coming in. If you want to see that agenda actually move forward, then it probably makes sense to have somebody who is more in line with that as we're going to migrate towards those conversations, right? And this is where, on that other accountability piece, like I said, you have 5 new city councilors that are coming in, right? They're about to start or immediately about to start. They've never taken one vote. Every one of them has talked about things that they would do, that they want to do, and that's what you're supposed to do when you're a candidate. But the Cuomo, the better Governor Cuomo quote, right, which is, you campaign in poetry and you govern in prose. We have moved from the poetic part. We are into that prose piece.
Honeymoon's over. Sorry.
Right. And that means, right. And that means that we, these votes are actually real things. And this is the first vote. And we know it can have an echo because everybody still talks about Michelle Wu's first vote for Councilor Linehan, right, to be city council president. Still. So we know that this has, some trails, some coattails on that. But more importantly, and I'll bring it back, and I'm not picking on anybody. I'm just saying it because this is my council, right? So District 4, where I live, Jim, where you live, right? We have a new city councilor incoming, right? Brian Worrell. Now, I'm sure we've all talked to him, had him on your show. I've talked to him out in the field and everything, but he's never taken a vote on anything. We don't know, right? We don't know. And so I think that's why having this conversation is so important, because if we know who these candidates who are running for president are, if we know, right, what it is that they want to do, if we know what their focus is and why it's different, and then our counselors, our respective district counselors make those, then we can interrogate what that vote actually says beyond just a conversation or a text chain that's in private that none of us are ever party to, but instead saying, look, this person centered racial justice, this person centered housing, this person centered substance use treatment, this person centered public safety reform. And that is the person you voted for. So what does that say about you, about how you approach this job, about how you approach the work that you're doing on behalf of our constituents? And we can have a more holistic and probably a more productive conversation with our elected people that way. Transparency is not a bad thing, right? That's the quote. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, and that quote exists, and it exists for a reason. And so that is why we have to have, I believe, these kind of conversations, and why they're so important right from the outset to set the tone for the kind of government that we want to have here in the city.
Just one thing I have to acknowledge, our viewer all the way over from Spain, who's listening, to say hi to David, and hi Donovan, good to see you in the room. And he has some opinion here, not really in the comments a lot. I'll go back after, because there's so much. If you all are listening to what David and Gina are saying, and David, that last part in your tweet, you're basically calling for a public process, like to almost in real time here. We need to find out who's vying and then send them an invitation and ask them what it is their agenda is for if they become city council president. What would they like to see? How would they work with Mayor Wu? How will, in times, if there's a difference, will they what's the word? Push back, if need be, with all due respect. And so listen, there is so much here. Gina, I wanted to ask you, I got a headache because my brain is all over the place, because there's so much rich information here. There's a tone being set around transparency and accountability in a process that if you've never been on 5 or don't know, or just not in the Boston Poly punditry, you don't know all the wheeling and dealing that goes on. And in such a momentous, monumental time, and with all due respect, not about Mayor Wu, post George Floyd, winter's coming, we got a school that's closed because of COVID numbers, and it's just so public safety edge. All right, y'all done got me started, Jesus. So Gina, myself in, and to you, when you said receipts, this brings up the point of there's not a guarantee that there will be an incumbent. Right. One of the new people coming in, and I think folks like us would be like, wait, do we want a newbie to be the city council president? Just because of our political awareness, we're like, I don't know. And so when it comes to receipts with the incumbents, we do have votes to which we can view how they voted, especially this year. And then with the newbies, we can look at their record in work, and so let's get into the conversation of vying. Anything shared from this point forward is just sort of conjecture and opinion. So if any trolls going back, don't go back and tell folks that, James, David, and Gina said X, Y, and Z. Let them go watch themselves. Just a little bit of shade there. And so we got newbies. We have, out of the newbies, if there was to be anyone, I think that would be considered the newbies of Ruth Z, Aaron, who else? There's Brian, Kendra.
Yeah. That'd be great.
And Tanya.
And Tanya.
Wait. Oh, Jesus. So as we're going in real time. Okay. So let's talk about the newbies. Let's start with Aaron. How do I ask this in a way that didn't put my guests on the spot? Do you think that Aaron has a lot of viability given the construct of the incoming council?
I think I think that any non-incumbent, and I don't know that that's happened, right? But like, I think any non-incumbent would have a lot of um, hoops to jump through, just because there's so, like we talked about, there's so much of the culture and the backroom relationships that aren't out front, right? But an Aaron Murphy tenure, I think, would probably be a thorn in the side of Michelle Wu. I don't know where she stands on pretty much anything. I don't know where she stands on participatory budgeting. I'm sure David can speak more to that, just because you guys did 1 million forums together. So yeah, but I think she would not be ideal. But on the flip side of that, I actually think that somebody like Kendra would give Michelle a different kind of hard time too, but in a good, like in a way I like, right? She would really, really push her from the left, and that could be very spicy. But I think the question you're asked, we can kind of, it's interesting, like based on the new people and the 3 folks who I'm aware of running for council president, those 3 people really do sort of define the factions, or like the types of groups on the type of people on the council right now. So I think your question about new folks really does translate into the people who are one of the people who are going to have the job, potentially have the job.
I want to go back to, because I was going to ask, and we're going to end with thankfulness, but I wanted to also ask who we're hearing. David, your thoughts on Lord Jesus, what I just asked Gina, newbies versus incumbents. What are your thoughts there? And again, you have a very unique experience away from Gina. You never worked on the council, right?
Nope.
Okay. So I never worked on the council. So Dave, you have it. We just need to name the level of expertise we have in here. Dave, you worked on the council for 2 different councilors. You ran for office. So there's a lens in which you have to speak to this. And so newbie versus incumbent, and then we're going to get into what folks are hearing.
Yeah, I think the practical reality of it is, coming from the council as a staff member and others, and just seeing it, right? It's not going to be a new person, when there's existing people, unless it was all new people coming in. I think, and Councilor Flaherty during the campaign was very adamant as one of his talking points, talking about the fact that you have so many new people joining the council starting in January, and then you had so many people who just joined the council. So that one of the reasons that he put himself out there and spoke to it was the fact that, as somebody who's been there for a minute, he brought a different level of just understanding of how the operations, how the culture is formed, right? So I think now, but I do think that this is really important, because while I don't think that any of the 5, and it's not that they're not capable, talented, individuals, but I do think that while they wouldn't be viable as candidates for city council president, they as a group in some ways are a big power center, right? They are potentially a big block, because we can project what we think about them. We can, listen. And this is, once again, goes back to why I asked this question. But we don't know ultimately where that vote is. You rewind the clock. There were a lot. I mean, we all were there, right? We remember kind of that firestorm that happened when Councilor Wu made that vote for Councilor Linehan, because there were a lot of people who said, based on, then Councilor Wu, about what she said, what she saw, what she did, right? Yep. And they were like, I can't believe that you would support, Bill Linehan, of all people, who are running. And she had her reasons, and, and respect that. And obviously that's the past, and we're here where we are now. But I think that if we just assume certain things off the bat, people can get surprised, right? And I think it's really important. I think it's really important that, once again, we have, as a public, we have this kind of information to say, okay, this is what this person is talking about. When you make that vote, what you were saying is, there is something about that message, that vision for the city, that you think is resonant, that you think is in the best interest of, if you're at large, all the people in the city of Boston, if you're a district councilor, of the people of your district and your constituents, for whatever reason. So I think that is actually a really important piece. And then, of course, remember, there's a whole other class that's only 2 years ahead of this one, right? We're not talking about folks who've been there for a million years. We're talking about people who are just coming on the end of their first term. And I'm sure we'll, get to a couple of those names as well. But I think it is really important, as we're talking about that kind of new folks coming in, non-incumbents versus the incumbents, that kind of conversation. Not that just longevity alone should be the determinant factor, but I think that having an understanding of how the body operates, how it works, what you need to do, where the bathrooms literally are in the building. I mean, I think things like that actually help.
It's now from 5, Dave, that's real, because anyway, I wanted to ask one question before we get into some of the names based on something Dave just said. And how do I propose this? Jesus, it just left me that quick. I'll go to names, and if it comes back, We used to have. Remember when we had Ayanna, Tito? Was it Felix Senior? No, Ayanna, Tito. Dream Team. What was it? What was the
Team Unity?
Team Unity. So we now, based on what you just said, so you got Tanya, Ruthsy, Julia, Ricardo, Brian. Who else?
I guess it depends on what you're using as the criteria for Team Unity.
Yeah, what's the
keep it real.
criteria?
Let's keep it real.
This is the question, though, and that's why, just to like take us to that, I'm going to just talk about the names, right? You have Ed Flynn, right, who is like a very nice man and goes to lots of things, but I would argue is not aligned with my values. And then you have Kenzie Bach, who is incredibly intelligent, really capable, very knowledgeable, particularly on housing, which for the mayor, you know, the rent control conversation, it could be really valuable to have Kenzie leading the helm. And then you have Ricardo Arroyo, who, you know, has really been unapologetically pushing on the racial justice front in a way that really you don't see from an elected official very often, right? But this spectrum, you know, I could see us breaking the other counselors into these buckets in different ways, right? Like I could see a real partnership between Ruthsy and Kenzie based on, you know, their background, also the campaign trail, right? You know, I could see, you know, obviously Frank Baker and Flaherty and Aaron are probably gonna go for Ed Flynn, you know, like that is definitely a sectioning off, but there's a world where, like David said, like, we don't know, like there's a world in which Ruthsy needs to come in and pull a Michelle Wu and vote for Ed Flynn. Like maybe that's a part of her political calculus and we don't know yet because we don't know her, you know? So it's very, very interesting.
Dave, your thoughts there as far as we get. So the names that I heard was Ed Flynn, Kenzie Bach, and who was the last one? Ricardo Arroyo, who introduced, and I was there for his first speech. He introduced racism as a public health issue. And so, David, your thoughts there. Let's go to the names. We can go with whatever order. Arroyo. Let's start with Arroyo.
Sure. You know, I think largely similar to what Gina was saying. I think that it's, and I'll take one step back to say this. I got to know all these people, you know, over the course of this campaign, the previous campaign. You know, I think they're all good people. You know, Councilor Bach, Councilor Arroyo both endorsed me and were supportive of me, and I really appreciated that. But I do think that they have, you know, the difference of opinion in terms of where that area of focus needs to be. Right. Yes. And I think that when we're talking about it, so we'll start with Councilor Arroyo. As you said, his first speech was talking about racism as a public health crisis. He has, as Gina was saying, been very forward and unapologetic about that, and that racial justice lens and how you apply that racial justice lens to all conversations in city government. So if we're talking about racial equity in housing, if we're talking about racial equity in Boston public schools, if we're talking about how that manifests itself in terms of public safety and a host of other issues in the city, and that is the direction we think that, yes, you know, we are at this unique and pivotal moment in our national history and our local history as well, then maybe he makes the most sense to lead the body in that way. If you go to Councilor Bach, right, as Gina was saying, not just as a housing policy expert, but also as the, you know, current Ways and Means chair, right? Somebody who's managing the budget, right? And once again, where we put those dollars, especially in terms of this participatory budgeting piece, is going to be very, very important. And housing was the #1 policy issue across the city that we all heard. Now, we also know that the housing issue in Beacon Hill is a little bit different than the housing issue is in Roxbury, is a little bit different than it is in Mattapan and Hyde Park, right? So how we have that conversation and what lens we look at that conversation is going to be very different. So I could see her, and once again, this is just conjecture, but I could absolutely see her stepping forward and placing housing, and how you get to your point, Jimmy, right? Having that dynamic between the council, and particularly through the council presidency office, and the mayor's office, because we know housing is an area where we could see a lot of very dynamic collaboration, or we could see a lot of tension, because differing viewpoints could really cause some conflict there. And then to, you know, to Councilor Flynn.
Good segue into the last one, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. And then to speak to Councilor Flynn, you know, I know, you know, basic city services, provision of basic city services is a big piece for him, right? And, you know, I said this a lot on the trail, you got to be able to do both things if you want to be with this job, right? You got to have big ideas, but you got to make sure trash gets picked up and potholes get filled. It is really important. Municipal government is the government that touches people, most directly. So it is important. And so perhaps that would be an area of focus, is how do we make sure that the snow is getting plowed equitably, right? How do we make sure that, things like that are happening? And also, as for himself, I know one of the big issues for him is, as a veteran himself, right? The cause of veterans and how you can extrapolate that out, because we know, unfortunately, so many of our veterans are dealing with homelessness, they're dealing with substance use disorder issues, they're dealing with mental health issues, right? And so perhaps that would be an area where he wants to focus is, we're talking about, what's happening not just at Mass and Cass, but obviously most acutely at Mass and Cass, and that is also a significant issue. And with the mayor's changes to her team and to her elevating a cabinet level position to speak to that, maybe, that's the area of collaboration. So as we're thinking about these things, and once again, I don't know this, right? You don't know this, Gina, you don't know this. We are all just guessing. But it would be amazing, in my opinion, for them to come out and say, look, you don't have to put a full manifesto. I don't need, rallies and all that. But even if you they all got Twitter, they all have email lists, right? Just put something out that says, I think these committees should be there. This is the general vision, like I said, of where I think the body should go, where I think the city should be focused on, so that then we all, as the public, can see that, can make our own assessments, and then can call our district counselor, can call our at-large counselor and say, hey, I saw Counselor Bach is really pushing housing as she thinks it's the number one issue, and this is her vision for it. I agree with that. I think you should vote for it. I feel, as a Black man here in the city of Boston, that racial justice really does need to be centered in terms of how we do everything at City Hall. So that's why I think you should vote for, Councilor Arroyo. I think that what's happening at Mass and Cass is a travesty, and we really need to move forward thinking about that. And that's why you should vote for Councilor Flynn, letting our elected officials know what their constituents actually believe about this.
Again, it's 9:44. Jesus, there's so much to unpack there. But one of the things I want to make sure that we do is, one, I'm going to reach out to those three people and one, see if they're doing it, and if they're willing to come on. The other pieces, and I'll start with Gina and Dave, and with you, since you started this with your tweet. Gina, based on the work that you guys do at Rivera Consultants, you all have a very unique lens to see what's going on locally, regionally, and nationally. And then our wonderful proprietary Winelia has a national lens as well. And so, what would an ideal city council presidency for this cycle look at her brain?
What her brain is moving. Well, that's such a good
look like. What would it look like?
From my vantage,
leave a little bit for David. Just leave a little bit for David.
I think Michelle has the opportunity as mayor to show the entire country what Boston is made of and what is possible here. And I think an ideal city council president is somebody who wants to collaborate in that vision. We need somebody who can push back, right? Like, that's just important. It's hard to think, we're in the honeymoon phase with Michelle, right? I hope to live here forever, but at some point she may want to do something that we don't agree with. And I want a city council president who has the confidence and also, the background and experience to say, no, we're not doing that. Or let's have a conversation, or let's have a, community input process, whatever. So I think it's a collaborator. It's a source of loving accountability to really show America and Massachusetts what it means to have a mayor who can get it done.
Got you. David, she left you a little bit.
We'll meet on the bone.
What does a process look like that is transparent, and that is open, and that is just it gives us the ability, because David, what you're naming is constituents, one, being able to test the relationship that will either change with an incumbent or will be established with the newbies by, we're calling you for your first vote. These are the values out of these three presumed people. This one aligns with our values as our district. And then we got to call all four at-large counselors. So things are changing. They haven't changed yet, but they're changing. David, what does a process look like?
Yeah, I think a process that looks good is just that. Right? It's that when that vote happens at the first council meeting, and people are, saying what they say and making their votes the way they cast them, that they can look back and it's not just, oh, I had, this conversation, this relationship. It's like, this is what my community is telling me. This is where we are going. We are rowing in the same direction as a district, as a city. And more importantly, we're not just doing it now to do it now. We're doing it now to change the dynamic, to change the course of this, so that this becomes something that we do on a regular basis, so that regardless of who those counselors are, regardless of who those candidates are, they know that the process is such that they need to be transparent. They need to put forth a vision for what they want to see in this what can be a very, very important position. And that once we turn that corner, once we open that door, the door stays open. It doesn't get closed anymore, right? We do, step out on this real new pathway for the city of Boston. I think in terms of the incumbent of that office, whomever that person ultimately is, the person I want to see, to echo Gino's point, is, someone who is willing to, in a constructive way, be critical, to push back, and somebody who realizes that, one, they're not the show, right? They are the leader of this body. They are the voice of this body in some ways, but they do their best work when they work to put all other 12 members into the best position to succeed. And if their success, hopefully, will end up being the city's success, and a success that is centered in racial justice, a success that is centered in equity, a success that is centered in understanding that there are some very real conversations and difficult conversations that we as a city need to have with one another, our elected officials, and led and oftentimes by our elected officials. And they need to be that voice. They need to be one of those voices, working with the mayor's office, working with the other members of the council to lead on that, because that's the only way we're actually going to make real progress. Otherwise, it's just a hamster wheel, right? We're just changing a few things here and there, putting a little bit of spackle here and there, little bells and whistles, but we're not getting to the core of those issues about why we see persistent gaps in education, why we see persistent gaps in wealth inequality, why we see so many other things that we all know and have known for decades. So if we are serious, really serious about taking the city of Boston into a new and a dynamic vision of not just being in this honeymoon period, but of actually producing something from that honeymoon period, of actually birthing something that is going to be a better version of the city of Boston, this is one small step, I think, in making that happen.
To Dalita's point, and we will be remiss if we did not name that the union a fan you have in the back has been acknowledged by Dalita. And so, but that's
32 BJ represent.
And so I wanted to just give you guys, first of all, thank you. And this is a good transition into thankfulness. We checked in yesterday, and sometimes I don't do well at getting a agenda out. Shout out to Carlos Enriquez that always challenges me to at least set some bullets. But today's two bullets were with our guests, was talking about the City Council Presidency, and I asked both of them. Maybe I just told Gina, David. I don't know if I told you. We're going to ask for, in the spirit of what the country and kind of the world has set aside for a day of Thanksgiving. We would be remiss if we did not name the horrific carnage and invasion on an indigenous people to this land. And I always think of Carolyn Crockett's opening statement when she became, yeah. And so we have to name that. But in a time that the country has set aside, we do Christmas, we do other holidays. And so in that spirit, I am asking my guests today if they would close in their closing remarks with thankfulness, because for those of us in this space, sometimes I came up with this term a few years ago, ignorance is bliss. Is my mother on? And awareness is stressful AF. Yeah. Moving in these spaces, and you all know this, our awareness of the tomfoolery and the BS that goes on sometimes that affects decisions that impact our quality of life can be a little bit stressful. And so with that, Gina, I'll because I told you first, and David, and I know he's ready because he's been preaching and the son of a preacher. Oh, look, I just got in trouble.
Oh my God, your mom's name is Gina as well?
I thought, Gina, I never told you that.
Oh, and she spelled it right. Hello.
That's one of the reasons why I thought you was Italian.
I am. It's in the mix,
And my mother is. She's happy, but we got to talk anyway. Wonderful joy moment there, Gina. Can you share with us? Well, I know one of the reasons why you're thankful this year, but can you share with us some thankfulness in the day that we're going to ask you as well? And folks, please don't tune out because I'm going to let my guest go. I need to share a programming update with you all. But Gina, thankfulness.
Yeah. Well, first, I just want to say thank you for acknowledging the genocide of Indigenous people and what Thanksgiving represents. I think particularly in Massachusetts, we have to remember that the first form of leadership and government here murdered and slaughtered many Indigenous people. So just take that to your table tomorrow. I have so much to be thankful for. I am feeling so held by my village here, my family, my chosen family. The work this year, I've been so grateful to do. I just feel very grateful for my village and the abundance that those connections have brought me. Like, I just have so much to be grateful for. So just holding all of that and all the people who have really held my back this year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. David, sir, thankfulness.
Yes, absolutely. And completely in accord with what you and Gina both said in terms of our recognition of the struggle and the plight and the continued struggle and plight of our Indigenous brothers and sisters here in Massachusetts and across the country. I think for me, well, first, I'm thankful to be here. So thank you for having this platform, having this conversation. I appreciate it. I'm thankful that people still read my tweets, I guess.
I always read your tweets, David. I do.
But in all seriousness, I mean, after this year, and putting so much, I have, just like Gina said, so much to be thankful for. Not just the people who voted for me and the people who supported me, the people who've reached out even after the election with just so many kind words. I am so deeply grateful for the experience of being out there and, speaking and learning so much more about the stories all across the city. And that's on the political level and of the caliber of the people that I had the privilege of running with and making new friends, right? And that's always one of those little sidelines of campaigns that I think is lost. And it's a beautiful and a good thing. And I'm wishing those who were successful all the success in the world, because their success is our success as a city. But on a personal level, and Jimmy, going back to our last conversation, was me and you.
Yes,
there's absolutely nothing that I'm more thankful for than my family. My wife, who lifted me up in so many ways that people will never know. My two little girls, particularly my oldest, after she got COVID, and her health and her happiness, and the fact that her sister stayed healthy and happy through the whole thing. It puts everything in this world into perspective, because for all of this, the political gamesmanship and the parlor conversations and all that, that's what's real, right? It's when, I wake up and I give both of them a hug and they don't care about politics or who's going to be city council president or who's president of the United States or president of the universe, because they think that probably exists. It's just that they just want to have a hug from dad and eat some candy and watch some cartoons. So I just have absolute watch Bluey. I love Bluey. It loves a Bluey. But in all seriousness, I am blessed beyond measure, and I wake up every day just so thankful and so humbled by the fact that I get to be in this place, be in this space, live this life, and have the support and the love of people like my family and of friends like the two of you and so many more. So I hope everyone who's out there watching right now has a wonderful Thanksgiving, has a moment of pause, a moment of peace. And for those of you who haven't been able to find that, that you're able to find that on the other side of it.
David and Gina, I really appreciate both of you. Yes, for the first part and all of the wonderful punditry. And as much as we do that, our goal is to bring information in a manner that is just a little, I've heard the term before, edutaining in our presentation, but the content of it is to push us toward mobilization, so we can come together and mass our numbers to improve our quality of life as individuals. And we do that as individuals. We do it as streets. We do it as neighborhoods and as communities and sub-communities. We will get a lot farther. And so I'm thankful for both of you. And I will go ahead and let you two go so I can go ahead and share this announcement and express my thankfulness as well, and get y'all off the camera so I don't turn red face, or y'all don't have to be on here with me red face. But thank both of you and give your families my best. And yeah, I appreciate both of you.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, Jerry.
Both. Thank you. One of the first announcements that I wanted to make while so many people are in the room, please remember that this coming Saturday at 11 a.m., we're going to do this live and in living color at the Underground Cafe. We are supporting a small business, a Black-owned business, a female-owned business. We had Nia Grace on, the owner of the Underground Cafe and Lounge. where our very first in-person Java Cafe is taking place this coming Saturday at 11 a.m. And so please come out and be a part of that. Please register. My email was going crazy yesterday. Thank those of you that are registering. We do have a capacity, and we're not too close to the capacity as of yet. So please make sure you go and register today so there's ample enough drinks. As you see there, along with brunch items from the Underground Cafe and Lounge, spiked coffee drinks, non-spiked coffee drinks, mimosas, and non-alcoholic drinks such as teas and bottled water will be available for purchase. And so come and support this Black-owned business, okay? So I shared with you a few moments ago or early on that I wanted to share a programming announcement. As you all know, every Monday, it started out just on Mondays in the beginning, October 26, 2020, I did my first broadcast with Spark FM online here in the city of Boston, curated by a wonderful Black woman, and started this online radio station. And I started out on Mondays from 1 to 3. And then she said, well, come and do a second day. And then it was Mondays and Wednesdays from 1 to 3 p.m. Now, you all know I am not a DJ and picked up some skills there, but really have spent the last year sort of learning about that whole online radio process. But then there is the non-radio time like now. And with where things are going, and this weekend, really with the viral tweet, and just Friday with the activity of Friday and just the caliber of guests that we're bringing into the Java Cafe. I had a wonderful conversation with Danielle, Miss Hot Sauce Johnson. And we both have, decided that it'd be good for me to put more focus just on this sort of platform and not necessarily on the radio piece, because most of you come here. And so we like talked and decided, and then we started talking about personal stuff. And so I just wanted to share with you all that Monday was my last broadcast on Spark FM Online. And going forward, there are other opportunities that are presenting themselves for this platform. And so there's a lot coming down to the pike. I am going to take the rest of this year and make some decisions, look at some things that are currently in place, and consider some proposals that are in place. And so I just wanted to share that with you all, that Spark is still percolating, but they're going to percolate and spark and get things done. And Danielle and I are going to do some things together and partner and raise awareness around things and push this thing around the importance of Black media. And as I had that wonderful opportunity to connect with the CEO of Ebony and Jet, y'all look out for 2020. There's a lot of stuff coming in 2022. But yeah, there's some great things coming down the pike. So that programming update, go ahead and listen today to Spark FM at 1 p.m. But I will not be on there for this season going forward. So thank all of you that tuned in. Thank you to Danielle Johnson. Thank you to the folks and the staff there. Shout out to Gary Banton, that every time I had a little technical issue, I had to text him and say, "Butt's not working." And if you don't know what butt is, it's a software thing that lets us play. And so anyway, I'm going to get ready to wrap up for today. It was awesome to have our guest in the room. We are going to have a Thanksgiving Java with Jimmy tomorrow. I believe I got Reverend Jeffrey Brown from 12th Baptist Church is going to join us tomorrow. And I think he called me early this morning for something else. And I was like, you're spiritual, because I was going to call you and see if you're free. I believe I asked him for 10 a.m. And so I don't believe we'll be here at 9 a.m. I have to double check with him. He said he'll be in the middle of making macaroni and cheese. And so, yeah, tomorrow morning, I think at 10 a.m., I'll put a post up and let you guys know. Thank you all for tuning in today. Don't forget Saturday. I was going to say I don't have any other announcements. Don't forget Saturday. Go register. Go register. The last thing I am going to leave today's session is with this. If you are on Facebook or on Twitter, I would like to propose that we start a trend based on BCC Pres Public. And what that means is Boston City Council Pres Public, pushing for a public process, pushing for those that are vying for the office to be public about their agenda, to be public in which the promises that they're making. to people that they get to vote for them. And so if you have any thought about the city council presidency on Twitter or on Facebook, please start using this hashtag so they can click it and go to one place and see what the constituents and what the people are saying. If nothing else came out of today, we have the ability to shift things to ensure that our new mayor has support, and then where she needs to be sort of in a constructive manner challenged, or because of some stuff going on internally that she can't, or feel that she can't tell us or won't tell us just because it's a bunch of political BS, and she needs somebody to be pushing on her for her to be able to go back and say, hey, this is what the people want. We need somebody that's going to rock with that and has a history of working toward equity, newbie or incumbent. I just felt my help, Jesus. All right, so that's the hashtag I'm asking everyone to use. I am so sorry that I was not able to get to the comments today. And yeah, just want to acknowledge a couple of special people I saw in the room. I still call him my brother-in-law, a good mentor from way back. Victor Ortiz is in the room from Rox Comp Health Center when Roxbury had its own health center. Y'all remember that? Galvin Leggett, my other brother-in-law, is in the room, and my brother from Tennessee is in the room as well. And Monica, I forgot where you're listening from. From Texas. Goodness, we got Texas in the room. We got Tennessee in the room. I think I saw someone else. We got Spain in the room. Lord Jesus, we about to go international, you all. I appreciate everyone for being in today. We also got DC. I just saw DC somewhere in the room. All right, y'all. We doing it. We doing it. All right. Have a wonderful day. I will give my Thanksgiving salutations tomorrow morning. I'm getting ready to go start seasoning stuff up to get ready for tomorrow. So don't forget, let's get this hashtag trending. BCC Pres Public, Boston City Council Pres Public. Put your thoughts there, and let's let them know that they need to tap into us so they can align with our values. What did he say? Bye, props. I'm talking to you. Y'all have a wonderful day. We will see you guys tomorrow, either at 9 or 10 a.m. I'll put a post up later. Thank you all for tuning in today. Peace.